The real problem was that the pastor preyed upon and exploited her vulnerability. That was the problem. Now, pastors who are predators set the stage perfectly. They play the role of devoted husband, father, servant of the church and of the larger community, and they're masterful at managing the impressions others have of themselves. They paint a portrait of one who is an exemplary, charismatic leader and teacher. But that pastoral portrait is more like the portrait of Dorian Gray. There is a secret and deceitful monster locked away in a dark and hidden closet. This is the perfect setup for everyone to believe the pastor. And that woman knows until that real portrait is unveiled, no one will believe her. Women like this, and men, get caught in what is referred to as the grooming process. And when pastors overstep professional boundaries and make sexual advances upon someone under their care, they are like any other predator, clergy or not. And they interact with their victims in the same destructive ways. They slyly spin their web around a potential victim and slowly and methodically move in for the kill. Step 1, gain their trust. Step 2, physically isolate them, maybe in a counseling session. Step 3, give short pastoral hugs upon greeting and parting. Step 4 is emotional isolation. Make the conversation increasingly personal. Find out their dreams, their issues, their weaknesses, and offer to mentor them. And subtly slip in questions about their sexual life. Touch their hand in a caring manner. Step 5, prime them for the next step through flattery and making them feel special, warranting the pastor's attention. A potential victim will not question the integrity of the words of a man of God. Step 6, that pastor enmeshes himself in that victim's life. They get to know their spouse, their children, their family, their friends, to make sure that in public, everyone, especially that victim, believes that this relationship is completely normal. Step 7, when in public, throw knowing glances or brush by them in very non-accidental ways, cementing the secretiveness of their special relationship. Step 8 is psychological isolation. In private, subtly criticize or question their family, other people who advise them, their friends, their spouse. Give a long and more meaningful pastoral hug. Step 9, share privileged information, even of the pastor's own unhappiness, loneliness, their own marital dissatisfaction. In brief, seep under their skin and into all their places of least resistance and greatest need, and make it so that the victim believes they need this pastor. Grooming can take a few days, but it can also take a few years, depending upon the skill and the patience of that pastoral perpetrator. Step 10, move beyond the pastoral hug to the sexual touching.
There you have it. This is what's going on, man, in these churches. Doesn't matter if it's Catholic or Protestant. Doesn't matter if it's evangelical, Baptist, or Pentecostal. And most of it's coming out of pornography. This pornography epidemic. Statisticians It doesn't matter. Barna, Josh McDowell, it's all over the place. 70% of Americans are addicted to porn right now. They're not using Covenant Eyes. They're not using TP-Link Deco M5. They're not having their wives hold captive their email passwords. No measures, no rules are being put in place. They're not binging theology. They're not binging the Bible to fill their minds up with the Word of God. And so they become demon-possessed. Plain and simple. The devil looks for a foothold to enter into their minds and their hearts, and it's so easy for him to slip in to their bodies through pornography. And so what happens is they become wolves in sheep's clothing at that very moment. And they end up, praying, not P-R-A-Y, but P-R-E-Y, preying on women in their church, and sometimes even teenage girls in their church. And, as this lady described, Cameron Alteris at the SNAP meeting, Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, SNAP, what she was describing was the grooming process. This is the methods that fallen pastors, corrupted pastors, porn-addicted pastors will use. These are the methods that they will use on women in their church. It's basically a long, drawn-out process of months and months of touches and hugs that they will use on women that they target. They don't use these touches and hugs on all the women in the church, only the ones that they weren't trying to have sex with. So the ones that really need to be looking out for this are the really good models, really attractive women in their church. These are the ones that are really going to be targeted the most. Blondes, curvaceous women that really have sex appeal. Okay. They're going to be targeted. They're going to be targeted by these corrupted, demonized pastors that really need to be exorcised. They need deliverance. And so as they're operating under these sexualized spirits, I don't think it's wrong for me to talk about this in terms of demonization at all. These people need deliverance exorcism. They need deliverance exorcism, and they need to experience some degree of Christian perfection. They need to be delivered from their sinful addictions. And so what I'm talking about here is that these people need to be broken off of their sinful addictions because they're under the control of the devil. They're not experiencing sanctification, which is deliverance from the power of sin. They're not experiencing that whatsoever. And so, this is such a destructive thing, and it's basically, it takes months and months. The pastor who's fallen, who's a wolf in sheep's clothing, he might have been good in the past, but now he's not. He's not good. And he's fallen now, all right? He's a porno addict, right? He's full of this spirit of fornication and adultery, right? So it's going to operate through him. He's going to have impulses to do things that are bad. And what he's going to do is he's going to pick out one or two women in his church. He's going to target them. And over the course of several months, what he's going to do is he's gonna try to put himself in situations where he's counseling that hot woman, right? Where he will give prolonged touches and hugs to her at different isolated moments. He will look for those opportunities to do that, okay? And he will go for it. And that's grooming. That's called grooming. What is that? That means that he's testing his his limits with the woman, and he's also getting her acclimated, getting her used to him touching her body. He's getting her used to him touching her body. And that is nothing more than emotional manipulation. It's emotional manipulation. And of course, he only thinks of himself as a man who's having a sexual affair of some type. But the woman doesn't look at it that way at all. The woman is being manipulated, mentally and emotionally manipulated, and she's confused, emotionally confused about what's happening here. She looks upon him as a spiritual leader in the church. She looks upon him as a representative of Christ. She looks upon him as a conduit of messages from God. And he looks at himself as a naughty, dirty old man having an affair with a lustful woman. So there's totally different points of view going on in both of these people's minds. And what's the problem here is that there's not mutual understanding going on. And he is taking advantage of her emotions. And she is coming back to the church over and over because she feels like God wants her there, not because she's attracted to this man. So these pastors also prey upon women who have broken family situations. And so it's a recipe for disaster for everyone involved. And whenever this stuff is going on, it needs to be called out. It needs to be called out, and it needs to be counseled immediately. And if you see this stuff going on in your church, where a pastor is making these awkward hugs and touches to a gorgeous woman in your church over and over and over, that's a huge red flag. And that needs to be reported to the pastor's headquarters or superiors immediately. So, it's just the way it is. This is emotional manipulation. This is the result of the devil entering into the heart of the pastor through pornography on the internet. And this is so bad. I mean, think about this. Pastors are supposed to be the force of good in the world. And don't look upon this as God failing. Don't look upon this as the church failing. Don't look upon this as evil conquering good. Look upon this as a plague. Because it can take the most righteous men and turn them into monsters. Porn is the problem. Porn needs to be preached against. Porn needs to be preached against. Porn is the ultimate problem here. Because porn is what's transforming the minds of even the best men in this country. And so porn needs to be attacked. For those who have been hurt by these things, yes, pastors need to be called out and rebuked. Yes, they need to be brought into correction by their bodies, by their their superiors. But we can't just look at that and think that that was the starting point. The starting point is porn. We have got to seriously in this country think about how we can get porn off of the internet. Porn is illegal. Porn is illegal in China. It's criminalized. If people are caught involved as pornographers, they are sent to prison for a term in China. They are sent to prison. They are sent into a prison term in China. Pornographers are. I can't really quite argue with a policy like that. I mean, that sounds like a great idea, honestly. Um, and it's also really hard to get access to porn in China. Like the way that the government and the IT people have worked together over there, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to get porn on your computer in China. So you have to really go out of your way to get porn on your computer in China, from what I've read, from what I understand. Uh, so I mean, as much as we say we hate the Chinese because they're communists. Yeah, but we also work with the Chinese in other ways because of their because of business. And I think that if we really set our minds to it, our country, if we really set our minds to it, we could copy them in that. You know, think about all the spiritual revival that could possibly happen if we did something like that in this country. God bless you out there. This is John with WesleyGospel.com.